You know I've traveled near and far, see the shining sea. I've seen a lot of places and people that were nice to me. One place that's in my heart, and this is how I feel. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. She's nestled in the sand hills on a river called Cakefield. Special to so many who proudly served our country here. She was named for Lafayette and known for cotton mills. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. My hometown, Fayetteville. I'm so proud to be from here. It don't take long when you're away from home to find out how you feel. It's always good to come home to Fayetteville. Babe Ruth hit his first one, heard around the world. Sherman marched with the Union and burned the arsenal. Old Market House still standing, but stands for freedom's will. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. My hometown, Fayetteville. I'm so proud to be from here. It don't take long when you're away from home to find out how you feel. It's always good to come home to Fayetteville. My all-American city, Fayetteville. Talking about my hometown, Fayetteville.
Well, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Fayetteville City Council meeting, February 10th, 2020 City Council meeting. At this time, we ask that all would rise for the invocation. We ask that Chaplain Tim Lever, professor at Grace College, and one of our Fayetteville City Police Department chaplains will come lead us in the invocation. We ask that you please remain standing and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. How you doing, Pastor?
I'm doing fine. Here's some words from Proverbs. Wisdom is the tree of life to those who eat her fruit. Happy is the one who keeps on eating it. The Lord's wisdom founded the earth. His understanding established all the universe and space. The deep fountains of the earth were broken upon by his knowledge, and the skies poured down rain. So have two goals. Wisdom, that is knowing and doing right, and common sense. Don't let them slip away. Our gracious Heavenly Father, I thank you that you are the giver of wisdom. You are the one known as divine providence by our first president, George Washington, and indeed you have been providence watching over our nation all these years. And I've observed how this city has become a pleasant and good place to live in because people have worked together in wisdom to make it so. So I just ask you'll be with our leaders tonight, guide them, give them the knowledge, the discernment, and wisdom they seek, and we commit them into your care. Amen.
Well, Chaplain, if you would please. We know you pretty well. You've been here with us before, but can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself or what capacities you serve in the ministry?
In a 3-point sermon?
Not quite.
No, I retired from, mobilized for the war effort. I was pastoring a church, mobilized for 1 year. They kept me for 5. When the 5 years ended, I didn't have a church to go back to, but Grace College offered me a professorship, so I've been teaching there. And then recently, someone high up in the police department noticed I was a chaplain without a chaplaincy position. They grabbed me and they said, quit goofing off, get over here and help our city. So now I'm working and helping with the police department as well. So it's good, and I thank the Lord for it.
Well, we thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for your service to the community. All right. At this time, I will turn to my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem. We have a very special member on the dais with us tonight. Tell us a little bit about her.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I would like to welcome Jasani Smallwood, and she is a junior at Polytech School. So we're going to turn it over to her.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jasani Smallwood from the 8th District and a member of the Fayetteville Youth Coming Council. Recently, FCYC had the great opportunity to meet Megan Good and Devon Franklin as part of the True to Yourself series hosted by the Art Council. They shared a lot of important information with us, which we took to heart and are very thankful for. This week, we'll be hosting our annual Kindness Matters initiative. During this week, students are encouraging kindness within their communities, whether they are at school, work, or even to random strangers. Our mental health group has also been focusing on teen dating violence. It is important to discuss this with our teenagers in a time that they are growing and maturing into adults. February is truly an impactful month for FCYC, and we are actively addressing issues and concerns prevalent in teens today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. At this time, Council, we really don't have any announcements or recognitions. We'll move right into business. Item 5.0 is the approval of the agenda. Councilmember Waddell.
I wanted to make a motion. That's
Yeah,
all.
that's
Okay.
what
I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Okay, so there's a motion by Councilmember Waddell, a second by Councilmember Wright. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Council, I'll look to you for your votes. Madam Clerk, that is unanimous by those present, 9-0. Motion carries. Item 6.0 is the consent agenda. Council, I'll ask for your consideration the removal of item 6.03. If you could include that in the motion to deal with consent.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the consent agenda be approved, except for the item 6.03.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Wright. There's a second by Councilmember Hare. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Council, I'll look to you for your votes. Madam Clerk, that is also unanimous by those present. All right, so item 6.03, thank you, Councilmember Wright. I had, look, we had some discussion with this item in a dinner meeting. I'd like to ask the manager, one of the staff members, if you could please come explain to us a little bit about this particular item, and had a few questions to follow.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, Jay Tolan, Chief Financial Officer. This item before you is appropriating the investment income, which was accumulated off of the 2018 bond issuance for Hay Street parking deck. As the project wraps up, we were looking to appropriate the interest accumulated to the total project, and that's before you tonight for approval.
So, thank you, Mr. Tolan. So basically, what you're saying is that we had a contract or have a contract to construct the parking deck with PCH and Kaufman or whoever they have subcontracted construction out. And that amount was a little over $17 million, which we have had several requests to appropriate additional funding. But in this case, this is actual investment income of about $180,000, you said?
It's 189, but we're gonna net 186 because we had to change the amount. There's like $2,900 that we needed to change on the
So this
initial.
is additional interest earned by the taxpayers on money as it was sitting during this project, right?
Right, because, as we issue the debt, we don't expend it all at one time, we expend it over time. And
So part of the concern that we had with this request, it shows that if this money is moved per the CAM request, that the total of that project then becomes 17.9 million, which means that exceeds the amount that we've set aside for this debt. What were the proposed usages for the 186?
Well, there could be proposed uses. One would be to some signage, some slight paving in the alley. That would be the city's responsibility. And then also, too, to close out the contract with Hay Street.
So I think what some of the concern was that you don't really have the details to it, according to the manager upstairs, that there are some questions, serious questions about this to make sure that, that this money is put back in a way that the taxpayers receive the best benefit from it. Even though it's investment income, it still will help offset some of the cost of building the deck. So, Council, what's before you? We're all familiar with the discussion. Is there an appetite to move this back to the following meeting so that the manager would have an opportunity to come back to us for with some of those questions that we had? Councilmember Waddell.
I would like to make, and Attorney McDonald, you correct me if I get this incorrect. I'd like to make a motion that we remove it from this agenda and move it to our meeting the fourth Monday of this month so that we can have an opportunity to review the information that we've requested.
All right, so there's a motion by Councilmember Waddell. There's a second by Councilmember Wright. Any further discussion on the motion, Council? All right, I'll look to you for your votes. All right, Madam Clerk, that is unanimous. That motion carries. So we'll look for this information pretty soon, guys. Okay, thank you. All right, item 7.0 is the public forum. This is a time that Fayetteville residents may have input and a voice in what goes on in their city. Due to policy restrictions, the forum will not last any longer than 30 minutes, and each speaker will be limited to only 3 minutes to address the City Council on issues related to the city of Fayetteville. Individuals wishing to speak at tonight's public forum should have signed up with the city clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. If you're here to speak on items that may be on tonight's agenda under the public hearing, we ask that you please reserve those comments until the public hearing. So when your name is called by the clerk, we ask that you come to the podium. Please clearly state your name and home address for the record. Then when you see the light located on the podium change from green to yellow, it means you have 30 seconds left to speak. When you see the red light come on, it means your time has expired. Again, due to policy restrictions, we're unable to extend the given time. With that being said, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yes, sir. We have 9 speakers signed up for this evening. Our first speaker is Mr. Mark Patton.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Mark Patton, 111 Old Gate Road here in Fayetteville. I am a military student transition consultant here in the Cumberland County Schools. I work for the Military Child Education Coalition. As part of my job the last 4 years, my job is to find resources for our kids. I came across an organization called the Community Blueprint. I'm now the chief steward for Community Blueprint. I'm very passionate about what it brings to our veteran community. It's been here for 7 years. We're the last one standing. We are your Community Veterans Engagement Board to bring in more resources for our military and veteran families. We seek to improve the following areas: behavioral mental health, housing, education, financial status, legal, employment, volunteerism, and family strengths. We integrate across a multiple network of nonprofits. We have about 50 currently that meet. We meet once a month and have our lunch and learn, where we feed everybody and talk about an issue relative to our community and our community veterans. We are part of the National Veteran Intermediary, which is funded under the Bob Woodward Foundation. They recently gave us a grant to continue operating. We're one of 7 in North Carolina, 150 nationwide. We are the only one that meets monthly and discusses the issues related to our community. We're very passionate about it. We all do it volunteer out of our extra time that we have each week. We have one this Wednesday to go through a recent roundtable that we held. We brought in 96 people from 45 organizations, nonprofit, for-profit, government, and we had 7 national organizations represented. Our big catalyst is a program called NC Serves, which is through the USO, which brings forces directly to bear for our veteran and veteran families. I'm actually one of the referrers in that system and have been on the board for it since its inception 3 years ago. It started in 2008 under President Obama, titled under America Serves. What we seek to do is become a force multiplier here in the area. When the base can't handle something for our military family, or we have a retired family can't handle, we seek to open that communication and let them know we are here. I don't think that's me. At the round table, our goal was to identify areas we needed extended help, what our expertise was, where we already had a lot of support, and then how we can not only improve the communication, we can improve our outreach. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for your service, and I have several veterans on the dais. We typically don't respond, but I'll allow them to say something. Councilmember Davis, you had something?
My apologies,
real quick?
Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned you meet when and where this meeting?
Our Lunch and Learn, and you can find that on Eventbrite, meets once a month, Wednesday. Right now at the Partnership for Children, we are going to work to move that to the Veterans Center at Fayetteville Tech. That's where we had our roundtable. Really liked the facility, and it also allowed us to bring a larger group in.
What time do you meet?
11:30 till 1 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And this is our first outreach. One of our outcomes was outreach to local political bodies. Next will be the county commissioners say, hey, we're here. We want to serve.
Well, thank you for what you're doing for our veterans. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Mayor, our next speaker is Ms. Teresa Lee.
Teresa Lee, 1048 Strickland Bridge Road. I'm here to talk about the inspection department. Councilman Wright kind of knows I've had a problem for a while with the neighbors next door to us. I say the inspection department. A few years ago, I had to call because next door they had appliances on the deck, and it's a triplex, so the appliances were in the middle deck. No trees, no bushes. They stayed there. I waited 2 weeks. I called the inspection department, and he said there are no appliances on the deck. Haven't looked at him. He said that the inspector was new. That was his excuse. So, okay. So, this past October, I had to call again, and I think Mr. Wright was involved with this. I contacted Alan Pulver, who is the inspector for our area. He proceeded to scream at me on the phone. I had to say to him, "Are you yelling at me?" So, okay. So they went ahead. The person didn't have electricity. They finally cleaned up the place. I had the occasion again to call January 15th because a refrigerator ended up in their front yard. So I called, and this time I didn't call Alan Pulver because I don't like controversy. So I called Tim Waggy, and I told him what was going on, and he said, okay. Not an hour passed, and 5 people descended on that property to clean it up. Now, I called about a refrigerator in the front yard. 5 people came. I called Mr. Waggy, and I said, so does my complaint mean nothing? He said, if they get there and there's no violations, there's no violations. I said, okay. I only had a mobile number for Mr. Hare and Miss Ingram, but I texted them the pictures of January 16th and of today with the refrigerator still in the front yard. Friday, I called Mr. Waggy, and I asked him because I called about a couple properties, but that one he said, I want to update. He said, they've taken care of everything. I'm sitting there looking at the refrigerator. They've taken care of everything. So I text Alan Pulver because I don't want to speak to him because he's not very pleasant. So I texted him. He said, yep, everything's squared away. Who's doing the inspections? Who's inspecting? The refrigerator, as we speak, is still in the front yard. So, and I see that all around town. The strip mall on the corner of Strickland Bridge and Rayford Road. It's a strip mall. It's vacant now, and I'm sure somebody's going to buy it for a lot of money. There's a pile of mattresses and furniture out in the back that's been there for months. for literal months. So again, driving around town, my husband and I just see a lot of stuff like that, and it's really, inspections department has issues here. I don't see anybody. Again, the refrigerator's still in the front yard, and as far as they're concerned, everything is squared away. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, can you have someone follow up with her as to why this has not been addressed? There are recent pictures that was provided that kind of supports that this is still occurring. So someone will talk to you in just a moment, okay? All right, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Robert Lee.
Yours?
Okay.
We understand, sir. We understand.
She said that's her husband. She had nothing to say.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is Iman Iranimi Mohammed Smith.
Honorable.
Greetings, everyone. God's peace be upon you. This will be rapid fire. With the name of God, the Benevolent, the Merciful, I greet you all in peace. Assalamu alaikum. I am Imam Irani Muhammad, the Emir of North Carolina, which means basically I'm of all the imams in the state of North Carolina, as the founder of Masjid Omar ibn Said and the builder of the first mosque in the whole state before Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, and the rest of them. We have many real concerns. We are very proud of the fact that Fayetteville is growing like crazy. It looks great, it looks fantastic. We would not accept any criticism from anywhere, anybody in the United States of America concerning Fayetteville's growth and development. We would not accept criticism. And we're just growing just that fast. Murchison Road is doing great, fantastic. We would not allow anyone to come in, and my state officials, North Carolina Legislative Black Caucus, would not allow anyone to come in and try to change Murchison Road. Go to Durham, North Carolina, you see North Carolina Central University. Fayetteville Street is the same. Fayetteville Street is the same. You go to North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, Hillsborough Street is the same. Who in the world are these individuals that think they come to Fayetteville, North Carolina, the largest military base in America is here, and they own campus at Fayetteville State University, and think they're going to play around with Murchison Road? It looks great. We're building 15 new dormitories beside the lake over at Fayetteville State University as part of the Fayetteville State University master plan. Chancellor Willis McLeod and myself put that plan together about 15, 20 years ago, the master plan. You can see it for yourself. The Rex Harris Museum is coming great. It's doing fantastic. In case you didn't know that, Rex is doing fine. He's doing great. The other thing is Dr. E. Smith's house over near where Fayetteville State University started in 1867. By the way, I'm also the founder and builder of the Fayetteville State University Alumni Museum. That's why I have my National Alumni pin right here in case you don't see that. I have run the alumni. My Legislative Black Caucus will attest to that fact. Other key issues are clearly crime is really under control. We have one of the most fantastic police chiefs in the country. We're getting the Legislative Black Caucus, in particular, an Obama administration official who's still around the world to get extra money for the police department, the sheriff department, the chiefs, for those police officers who are very good at what they do. And they have a good relationship with the community leaders. If they don't have a good relationship, we would not recommend no pay increase for anybody. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Steve Harper.
Hello, sir.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for y'all's service for serving the city of Fayetteville. My name is Steve Harper, 5707 Bashford Court, Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been a resident for 30 years. And my concern tonight is about the short-term rental. Matter of fact, last week, I was talking to my neighbor over there. He was telling me, we got our Airbnb in the neighborhood. I said, no, I didn't know it. He said, yeah. I said, do they have any codes for that through the city? I said, well, I'm going to go down there Monday morning and check it out. But when I got back home last night and read my paper, I seen it's already been brought up. As the chaplain said this afternoon, wisdom and good common sense. So I hope y'all city, the council will use wisdom and good common sense. I know people have a right for their property to do mainly what they want to, but I think the city should have some kind of codes and regulations because these days and time, and I saw the article about Councilman Dawkins said about house parties and stuff. And I was once young, but these young people now, they have these parties, and everybody have a gun now. You know, and as a matter of fact, the house is right behind my house. I don't want to be in my bed one night and wake up shot. You know, I'm being serious, but I think something really need to be done about that. Y'all need to use a lot of wisdom and common sense when you make a decision. Whatever, I know say the state's involved in it, and you know, but y'all need to make a move on that. And serious. And like the lady said about the code, there are some things. Anything can be improved, but the code enforcement in Fayetteville, it needs some improvement. It really do. I mean, like you said, you go through the neighborhoods, you see all these cars that's been in the yard for 6 and 7 years, haven't been moved, trash everywhere. I mean, really something need to be done about that. I have a neighbor, friend of mine, he's 91 years old. He served in 3 wars, World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War. He cuts his grass. His neighbor across the street, they've been on him for the last 7 or 8 years, and what they'll do, the code enforcement officer will go out there. 2 or 3 weeks later, his brothers will go there and cut the grass. The backyard look like a jungle. I even called this same house that's renting out now. I got 29 minutes. I even called the code enforcement on them about when I first moved there 30 years ago. They had shrubbery in the yard, fence length. The stuff is about 30 foot high up in the air now. So I called the code enforcement. He said, nothing you can do about that. You can cut it. Why should I have to cut somebody else's problem? You know, the weeds is going to my yard, going to the neighbor's yard. He planted a pecan tree. He haven't had a pecan off that tree yet because the squirrels and the weeds is over there running across on his tree. They climb over, they eat the pecans before you can get the pecans off the tree. But serious. But something need to be done about this. Be serious about this RV.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Our next speaker, I'm sorry.
Did have a question about that, Mr. Manager. I know the discussion upstairs was we didn't need any actual item. That item that you referred to, sir, is coming back to a council work session, so it's on. But we're going to deal with it at a work session. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Bryce McLean.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Bryce McLean, 647 Cressida Drive. I'm here this evening to represent a youth program that deals with community outreach, in particular here in the Campbellton District, Smith Recreation, College Lakes, and Spring Lake areas. What I've found is a solution to the issue of children being out of school, whether it's in-school suspension that leads to out-of-school suspension, whether it's the weekends, whether it's the break from school in the summer. We have bus routes that run all throughout this city and every other city like ours. We have leaders that already come forward as coaches, and they also bridge the disconnect between the community and the municipalities. They also provide information as a liaison to resources, because I know that's what I found myself doing haphazardly by being in that role model position. I have kids that don't come to practice because they have issues at home. I have kids that don't come to practice because of school. I have kids that don't come to practice because a father or a family member just passed. The problem is that parents look to me for a solution. I have solutions, but I don't have the capital. What we have done in the past is work with the resources in the community by connecting ourselves. The middle schools already have Dress for Success organizations because they have social workers that go there and teach a small group of young men how to be affluent. The high schools have the ROTC programs that have discipline and also have man hours to give in the community. The colleges have a sociology department that would make me ashamed to go out and try to make a program work. But what we have found is relationships with Fayetteville State, with the trade schools over at Fayetteville Tech, and we have started teaching. One course that we taught at West Area Middle to their Men of Distinction program, Men of Promise program, was not getting emotional, making bad decisions. And that comes because I've had my own experience being a survivor of gun violence. Another course that we'll be teaching later is don't be afraid to pick a trade, because we want children to pick up on, if you're playing sports now, the economics and the statistics say that you may not make a career playing sports later, and you don't need to try to produce family members to try to make a sports team. So what we've done has come forward and provided solutions by working with people that are already in the community, that are already granted monies to do these things, but the community itself has disconnected because they aren't knowledgeable. And I found a way to do that, and just wanted to make you guys aware of it. Our organization is called Help Unite, Help Inspire Life, and we look forward to working with the city of Fayetteville in the future.
Thank you, sir.
Well, excuse me, sir. What was the name of it again?
Help Unite, Help Inspire Life, community outreach from 5 to 25, because we have a vocational rehabilitation piece that goes along with that.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. David Wendelken.
Good evening, sir.
I'm David Wendelken, 2108 Pinewood Terrace. I'm here in regards to a thing in the Fayetteville Observer that you guys, I guess, are going to do at a work council. I'd like to know when, on Airbnb, short-term rentals, and even long-term rentals. I'm a landlord. I don't have a problem with the city doing good quality regulation of any business for safety and so on. That's your job, and that's what you should do, and I fully support that. But what I read in there was that there was a problem like drug parties or whatever at Airbnb facilities. And I'm going, why, if you know there's a drug party and you send the police to the party, why is the person who rented the place to someone going to be held to account instead of the people who caused the problem? The lease arrangements don't allow for that kind of thing. So the people who are doing the parties are the ones breaking the lease, and they should be the ones paying the fine or doing the jail time or whatever it is, not some innocent bystander. The same goes with a law I read a couple years back on if there's multiple complaints at a property from that a tenant was being disorderly or whatever, that the landlord could be fined. And I'm going, why should I be fined because someone else broke the law? I mean, if the police went to somebody's house 3 times and couldn't be bothered to put them in jail for causing a problem, why is it worth fining me for what they did? I mean, if there's any one un-American thing I can think of, it would be to fine one person or punish one person for the crime another person did. That's not right. Thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate that, sir. And that will come up on the next council member work session in March. It's the first Monday.
Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Charles Matthews.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. It's great to see all of you again. I'm Charles Matthews. I reside at 3618 Tyndall Court, Fayetteville, North Carolina. After hearing Council Lady Tisha Waddell's prayer during the inauguration, I came to a conclusion that this is a very unique team of council members and mayor. I said this in a good way. I'm a born-again Christian, and I love you all, and believe you are Christian also. And that is very unique to have a team of Christians govern the great city, this great city. You notice I used the word team. While in the military, I was in the teams. I was a crew member in the Air Force on flying status. Also, I was in a team in Special Forces. I'm saying this all to get to a point I heard Council Lady Waddell say in her prayer also, and that is we must work as teams, not just for your district, but for the whole city of Fayetteville. Sometimes there's something more important in another district. Just join in and help, and then to get back to yours. J.P. Riddle donated 2 parcels of land for future parks. First parcel was 29 acres on Little River and Cross Creek joining Mary McDonald Park and Glenville Lake. The second parcel was 20 acres located on the west side of Shawmill Road and would have lake frontage property on the upper end of Rosa Lake. This was January the 7th, 1991. Mayor Dawkins and the city of Fayetteville did a great job at Masoret Park and Glenville Lake, providing them with a beautiful nature walking trail and a greenway, predominantly white neighborhood. Mayor Dawkins and the city of Fayetteville didn't do anything with the second parcel of land on Rosa Lake, predominantly black neighborhood. Like the city always put the, later the city also put a bike trail and walking and a greenway near Methodist College and Cape Fear River, another predominantly black neighborhood, white neighborhood. I wonder why. It looks like we stopped talking about the walking trail from Fayetteville State to Smith Lake and Fort Bragg. I wonder why. I know the city has fund for it. Please read the information I have in the package in front of you. This is Black History Month, and I have a book in there, and it also has the first black senator, which is from Fayetteville, North Carolina. You can pass it on to a youngster. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, our final speaker is Terry Johnson.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Terry Johnson. I reside at 5121 Wichita Drive, 28303. I am a candidate for North Carolina House of Representatives, District 44. Had to get that in there. But I stand before you this evening as the outgoing president for the Foxfire Concerned Citizens Association. I have resided in Foxfire since 1970. I have been the president of the association for the last 4 years. In the last 4 years, the association has increased their scholarship to Westover Senior High School from $500 to $1,000. We've been giving this scholarship for the last 25 years. We have donated to the American Red Cross in Cumberland County and also in Puerto Rico. We have donated time at the food bank, at the shelters whenever there's a storm. I have no complaints about the city services because in the last 4 years, from stormwater to garbage to policing to animal control to road repair, sidewalk repair, the city has been on point. See it, click it, Fayetteville, 4331FAY. And I also want to give a shout out to Miss Kathleen Rupert, who's about to retire. She's a crime stopper, crime prevention. She's retiring April 1st. Kudos to her for the 25, 30 years that she's been in the community. And I also want to give shout out to City Councilman DJ Hare. He is on point. He is on point. Before we take any issues to him, we have already spoke about it in our executive meeting, in our general meetings, and then when we take it to him, if we have to, it gets done. And so I have much regard for also Mr. DeBerry from the city inspections. He has been on point. You know, in our neighborhood, it's unique. It's an older neighborhood. I get it. We have to work with homeowners, renters, apartments, Section 8, nothing wrong with it. It's just a good mixture, and we just have to work with it. We have to be patient, be understanding of our neighbors. Foxfire is a good place to raise your family. And as I continue to seek the Democratic nominee for North Carolina House of Representatives, I had to give some things up my wife said, or she said, deuces. But I'd like to continue to give a shout out for the city services. Thank you for a job well done.
Thank you for your service, sir.
No, we have no further speakers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time we will move to our public hearing. Individuals desiring to speak at the public hearing must have signed up to speak with the city clerk by name and address before 7 p.m. this evening. 15 minutes will be allowed for each side of the issue at the public hearing. Individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless by a previous arrangement a single spokesperson is designated. in which case the spokesman may use the entire 15 minutes. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium. Please clearly state your name and address for the record. You may then address the council. When the light changes from green to amber, it means you have 30 seconds remaining. At the end of your allotted time, the timer will ring. And Mr. Brown, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm here this evening for two public hearings on two different areas of the Phase 5 annexation sewer extension. Mr. Mayor, as you're aware, that after the public speaking is done today, I will be available to anybody who has questions about this in the Lafayette room to answer all their questions until they're finished. So the first section is Area 32 East, Section 1. This is the public hearing for that. This area is in District 6. Excuse me. Yeah, this is District 6. This is Wendover Place. And the council, as the council is aware, has accepted many of the private streets in this area into the area. So citizens who were on private streets are now getting water and sewer because of that action by the council. So more people are getting water and sewer because of that action. So I just want to acknowledge that. This area is a little bit out of sequence because other areas we're currently working, we're just finishing up areas 20 and 21. And the reason we're doing Area 32 now is because of the I-295 corridor coming through and also other DOT projects that are widening Stony Point Road and Camden Road that would be in conflict if we stayed on schedule. So this eastern part of Area 32 we are going now, and some citizens will get water and sewer in that because of that. So I'm going to go over what we've done so far to date on this, what's kind of happening next, talk a little bit about how the assessment cost to property owners will work, and what some of the financing options are. So we sent out survey and appraisal notifications on January 2018 and February 26th, in 2019 to Area 32 in Wendover Place. On November 12th of 2019, the council adopted the preliminary assessment resolution. On December 4th, we mailed resolutions to the property owners informing of this. So some of the upcoming events are we're going to advertise as soon as the council gives us permission, which we expect to happen on February 24th. We're going to advertise for construction bids to go ahead with the construction of this. We'll complete the construction. Upon completion of the project, we'll make the sewer available for customers to connect, and we'll issue a preliminary roll that will show the different assessments based on the guidelines that we use. And then we'll ask council about 6 to 8 weeks after that to confirm those assessments. The cost to property owners, the city council has fixed the assessment for all of the Phase 5 annexed areas for single-family residential lots at $5,000 for sanitary sewer. There's no additional assessment if the property owners also get water. So there's only one assessment, even if they get water and sewer, of $5,000. If it's not a single-family residential lot, the per foot rate is $55.56 with a 90-foot minimum. This is the same cost per foot that a 90-foot residential lot would get. So the property owners are being assessed at the same cost per front foot, plus the average cost of the lateral charge for all the properties. These areas we're talking about here, okay? So no payment is due until construction is complete and the assessment roll is adopted. And financial assistance is available through the city for those that qualify. The payment options, the customers can pay in full with no interest within 30 days. And the financing, they can finance for up to 10 years. Council policy is to establish the interest rate at prime plus 2% at the beginning of the fiscal year in which the properties are assessed. So these properties won't be assessed for a while now because it hasn't come construction yet, so council will set the interest rate later on. And then they can pay in annual or monthly installments. And with that, I'll take any questions you have on Area 32 East.
Did have a couple of questions before we open the public hearing. Councilmember Wright, and then Ingram, and myself.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brown, for that presentation. Just one question for you. A lot of residents have concerns with paving of the streets after the completion of the sewer. Can you talk to that and kind of explain and break it down? Because when you finish, sometimes, you know, you kind of patch it and then you go to another area. When do the whole street is paved and when not?
Councilmember, yes. So as you know, the commission voted in 2016 to be responsible for paving all of the streets. okay? And we worked very closely after the installation of the sewer. We worked very closely with the city staff, and we came up with a process that was decided upon to give the better quality of road when we were done with it. So what we do is we permanent patch it when we go through that, and then we wait a year because we have a 1-year warranty on the work that the contractor does. So we wait a year and make sure that if any sinking or settling has happened, that gets corrected. And then after the year, the city staff comes in and uses their paving contractor to come in and do that work, and then PWC pays for that contract. So while it takes a little longer for the paving to be done, we're confident that the city and the taxpayers get a better street for that because they don't have settling and things like that. So they get a smoother street and a better street when we're done that will last longer.
Absolutely. Thank you. I just wanted to make the community aware and those listeners that, those streets will be done correctly after the work is done. So
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I had, if you can go back to the financial piece where it talks about the $5,000.
Yes.
Thank you. So I just wanted to be said on record that these residents can make payments. They don't have to pay the full $5,000, but there are options. One, we see to receive financial assistance, but there is another option where they can make payments over time before that construction is completed. I just want to make sure that
So
the residents
we
know that.
we do accept prepayments on assessments. So if citizens want to start paying money on assessments before it's done, they can do that. If you look here, after the assessment's done, there's 30 days before any interest is charged. And then after the interest, you can finance it up to 10 years. So you can prepay if you choose to do that, or you can wait until the assessment is confirmed by council and then begin paying there. You can have 30 days to pay in full with no interest, and then you have up to 10 years to pay in annual or monthly installments at the interest rate set by council, and there's no penalty for prepayment. So if you start out paying monthly payments and you get a little bit more money and you want to pay ahead of schedule, there's no penalty for doing that.
Okay, and my second question is, with these payments, are they given timelines of a prediction to when this construction can be done, or when they are expected to have it paid by?
Yes, ma'am. So what we do is whenever these areas start, we have 3 public meetings with the citizens in the area usually at a church in the area. The first one is a pre-construction meeting. So we notify them that construction is getting ready to start, and we talk to them and we walk through the effect that construction is going to have on the neighborhood, and we know it's messy and it's going to be hard, but we walk them through that, how it's going to work. We assure them how we're going to make sure that emergency vehicles can get in there, that they can get in and out if they have to do that. And we talk about connection and assessment at the end of that meeting. But we meet with them before construction starts and we tell them what the schedule is to do that. Then when construction is complete, we have a connection meeting, and we talk with the citizens about the connection, what they can do to connect. The connection, they do not have to connect. Connection and assessment are separate things. They can choose to connect, and we talk about that. There's no additional charge for connection if they connect within the first 6 months of it being available for them from us, but they would have to pay the plumber to connect, and we talk through all of that. And we have members of the Plumbers Association and a member of the City Inspection Department there to answer any questions about how that works and the connection. And then when the council has acted on the assessment, we have an assessment meeting, and we have our staff that collects the assessment there, and we walk through their options for how they pay the assessment, and then we can set up those payments as they're there right now. The financing with the interest rate, there is no credit checks. There's no sense at all. If you want to finance it, you can finance it. Everybody's allowed to finance it, so nothing stops people from being able to finance it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Council, we're going to wrap this up until we open up the public hearing, and we'll deal with it. With Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Okay, just a couple of questions. As far as the assessments, how was that determined?
So the City Council, when we started Phase 5, created 2 groups of assessment, two sets of rules for assessment. Single-family residential lots, the assessment is capped at $5,000. And there's a set of guidelines that we use to do that. Basically this: if the property has 180 feet or less of frontage along the street, okay, that's assumed to be single-family residential with the $5,000 cap, unless there's a reason it's not, like it's a commercial building or it's a duplex. It's not single-family residential. So the vast majority of the assessments are single-family residential lots that are assessed at $5,000 fixed. if the property has more than 180 feet of front footage, which is typically much larger than a single-family residential lot, okay, then we assume that it's not single-family residential unless there's a reason why it's not, okay? For example, in the Wendover subdivision, there's a homeowners association that had restrictive covenants that said that this can only be single-family residential and you cannot subdivide the properties. So those restrictive covenants, one of which has lapsed, but we're working with them to get in place, would allow those to all be single-family residential because that's all you could put on that property. Other reasons why it might not be single-family residential, if there's wetlands or utility easements or power lines that run through there that you can't develop the property into other things. We have some properties in the more recent areas where there's properties that have 1,000 feet of front footage. That's not a single-family residential lot. But that's how we do that. So there's two sets of criteria, and we go through them very carefully to make sure we're consistent in how we apply those criteria, as we've been doing all through Phase 5.
Okay, when the letters are mailed out, is it some information there specifying the qualifications for?
So the letters are mailed out, and they talk about what I just walked you through about in what's on the slide that we just looked here. They provide this information, and they provide those guidelines about what we do, and then they have, those letters go out from, there's two sets we send letters out about the meetings that I talked about, and that comes from our communication people, and the letters to the property owners, everything that goes through council come from me. So I send them a letter, and they have my phone number, and they can call me if they have any questions about how their property would be assessed.
Okay, well, I mean, as far as like the financial support, are we putting information with there so they'll know that?
So when
the financial assistance?
Yeah, so when we get to the point of connection, which is the first thing that the city has financial support, we give them the contact information for community development, who manages that program for the city, and then we invite members of community development to come to the meetings, because there's two ways that the city helps. They help with financing for connection with the plumbing, and they help with financing for assistance if people qualify. And we provide that information and invite them to our meetings to talk to the citizens.
Okay, my last question. So again, it's depending on the size of the house, what the foot, I mean, so other than that, it's across the border as far as the fee?
It's the front footage, yes. So that's the guideline. And if it's less than, if it's 180 feet or less, and it's not a duplex or a commercial building or a church, then it's single-family residential.
Okay, now how are we monitoring that?
So my team is responsible for applying those guidelines. Okay, and then I look at each one of the ones that there's any question about whether it's not single-family resident. I look at it and apply the guidelines, and then I'm available for questions, because what we'll do is Area 21 is coming to you. You'll probably see the resolution next meeting. So I'll be available to answer any questions you have, and if we made an error in assessing something, we correct those errors. Okay? So you will have the opportunity to see them. Citizens will have that. They'll have the opportunity to question it. Okay, and then we walk through and answer their questions, and if we've made a mistake when we do that, we correct that.
Okay, thank you for answering the question.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Brown, you can have a seat. We will open up the public hearing. This time, Madam Clerk, have any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, we have one speaker for this item, Mr. Gilbert Hall.
Hello. I'm hard of hearing, so if I talk out of the way, I'm sorry. I'm here against this because I got 12 lots on King Road, and only 2 of them you could hook to that sewer pipe. The other 10 lots, some of them are 800 or 900 feet of pipe you would have to put to hook to it. So I'm against this 100%. I was at PWC about 3 months ago. One of my tenants was complaining about a $200 water and sewer bill, and I was told by PWC that a $200 water bill for, this was a couple and 4 kids, they said a $200 water and sewer bill is just normal. Now that's what PWC said about it. Now I was down there to find out why the water bill was $200, and they said that's just normal. So I don't want no sewers, because they're gonna want $100 a month for them first thing you know. And if they do this, like most of this is rental property, if they do this, I'm gonna have to raise everybody's rent $100 a month just to take care of this, and that don't include hooking it up. So we're talking about having the rent going up a bunch if we have to do this. I really don't know what they were doing. I talked to the man at PWC. He said they run a pipe straight down King Road. And like I say, I got houses that are like 800 or 900 feet from there. And hooking a sewer to them will just cost too much to do it. But they want me to pay $5,000 for them lots, and knowing I can't hook to them. That's what I'm against it there. I only got 2 of them houses I could hook to without running a lot of pipe to it. And according to them, they want $6,000 to run 480 feet in front of my house. I'm running by the highway there. So if you go by their numbers, it'll cost thousands of dollars just to hook one house up. Okay?
Yes,
All right.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Brown, there was a couple of questions. Madam Clerk, was that the last speaker?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me.
Yes, sir.
We'll. I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
All right. So we'll close the public hearing. So I did have a question. Then I'll go to Councilmember Hare. In a case like he's talking about, if you have multiple houses on one parcel, and there's not an agreement that some of the other houses will not hook up to it, there's nothing that you could do. I mean, I would hate to pay $5,000 for 5 or 6 properties that I was never going to hook up. There's nothing that you could sign.
Right, so when we talk about lots like that, we describe them as flag lots. And if you think about that, there's a very long section, a very narrow point that's the access to the street that's very long. As he said, it could be 800 or 900 feet. And then there's a house in the back of that lot, okay? And all 10 or 12, how many properties have, most of them are like that. And he's correct, some of them, the depth of the lot is very small and you could connect to the lot. But the other ones, we're making sewer available. And as I mentioned earlier, connection and assessment are separate. So the assessment is their share of the cost, $5,000 on that situation, because they're all single-family residential, is for the making sewer available. They do not have to connect. So I understand that that's expensive, but that's the guideline, that these are single-family residential lots, and they get a $5,000 capped assessment. That's the guidelines that we treated consistently through Phase 5. So it's from the guidelines perspective, that lot that looks like that with 800 feet of depth is the same service as somebody who has a front with maybe 100 feet of depth and they're right up against the road. It's the same type of a property. It's a single-family residential property that now has access to sewer. And I've met with him and talked to him about some possibilities of combining lots, but because there are houses on those lots, you can't combine them by city ordinance. Because if you combine the lots, the front footage would be less and it would be a cheaper assessment. But because he has houses on all of them, you can't have multiple homes on a single parcel of land. So we did talk to him about ways we could reduce the assessment, but because there are houses on the parcels, you can't have, in a single-family residential zoning, you can't have multiple parcels on multiple homes on the same parcel of land.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Hare?
Thanks, Mayor. You asked part of my question. Just wanted to give a little echo to the gentleman that came up as a friendly suggestion. You might want to take an opportunity to see if there are leaks on either side of the meter. You said you had a very high bill. Because I deal with a number of waters myself, you don't need to engage me. But, to check that, to see if there are any leaks, or even go to that meter and see if that meter is spinning, because it does. And then also, you can probably look in the house at each fixture to see if there's any leaks. That's just something that you can probably also take a look at. Thank you, Mayor. Just want to suggest.
Mr. Hare and Mr. Mayor, I will, I've already met with this man about the assessment, but I will give him my card and we will get together and talk through that and make sure that everything is fine with that.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Wright?
Yes, Mayor. I withdraw my question. He's going to get with the man and they'll cover any questions that they had. So I'm good.
Thank you. Councilman Davis?
Mr. Brown, have you broached the conversation with the gentleman about possible financial assistance? Have you made that offer to him, given him the application, let him know about the guidelines? Because maybe the families qualify for that program that we have in place.
We haven't yet, because we're not at that point where he's really faced with the assessment or connection yet, but we will do that at the time, because we haven't even started construction yet. So this is a year and a half away from being the point where he might have to decide whether he wants to connect and might be eligible. And the city won't start looking at the eligibility for these things until the construction's done and they're able to connect and the assessment is coming. So we will do that, but it's just too early in the process for doing that. We do that with everybody.
And the requirements for utilizing these resources are based on the renter, not the property owner. So a family of 2 adults and 4 children may well qualify to maybe access some of this.
I'm not sure about how, those are federal guidelines, it's federal funds. I'm not sure how that's applied. Somebody from the city might be able to answer that or get to you later about that.
Not rental property. I think it's owner occupied. That would be eligible for the assistance through our community development department. But the financing that and I'm not even sure about for commercial, for rental properties, if it has to be 8% or whatever the owner financing is that required to be owner occupied as well?
No, the assessment is on the property owner, because the assessment is a lien on the property. So the assessment is paid by the property owner. The tenants are not subject to the assessment cost. And anybody can pay for the connection, but a renter can't decide to connect because they don't own the property. So they can decide to pay for the connection, but they would have to get the landlord's permission to do that. So, but the assessment is on the property owner, so the property owner is the one that would be responsible for the assessment.
So if this gentleman has 10 parcels along that strip, that would be $50,000 minimum.
Right.
That he'd be looking to pay as the owner.
That he would be assessed for that, yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Banks McLaughlin?
So I know you mentioned that it'll go towards the owner. Say, for instance, at the time someone is paying on those assessments and decide to sell their property. How does that work?
So the assessment is a statutory lien on the property, and once the assessment is confirmed by City Council, if you want to sell the property, the assessment has to be settled as part of the sale.
All right. Council, I think we've talked about this. I'm going to ask the question, speaking to the overall Phase 5 project. How many more areas do you have to go? What's an estimated time frame for completion?
The last area is Area 34, which is scheduled to begin construction in 2025. And we're over 66% complete with this project. There's about 7,000 parcels in the project total, and we've got about 5,000 of them completed as of most recently, Area 21.
So the question that I had posed for the previous chair and Mr. Trago, some years ago we asked or shared with PwC, DOT had a model of design build when they were putting these work contracts out. These folks by 2025 would have been in a part of the city for over 20 years, or nearly 20 years. Has PwC looked at accelerating the installation? Because we hear this, that's probably a number one issue that I hear, as well as the people who represent the West, that it's taking too long. Has PwC looked at another model other than what you're using to do the work at the pace in which you're doing it?
So, Mayor, at the November meeting when I was here talking about Area 32, about why it was in the schedule the way it was, you asked me to take that back to Mr. Trago and Chairwoman Shaw, and we did that, okay? And the issue that we're finding is this. We're operating under the schedule that's in the agreement that we agreed to with the city. We are finding, and I think as you get into some of the stormwater things, you will find the same thing. There's not a capacity of contractors who do this kind of work to be able to finish this work. Even if we could snap our fingers and have it designed today, there's no contractors who can to do the work at a fair price. So we have a shortage of capacity in the ability to build these projects is the main holding block behind
So
this.
nationally, you don't have people who qualified to do this work.
We almost every time we do this, we have to rebid again because we don't get enough bids to do it on the first bid. So
What
we're
was
very
it?
limited in
Are
contractors.
you
to do-
bidding it out the old way that we were talking about, or with a design build RFP?
A design build does not fit this model. A design build is something where you can go in and as you're building it, you can decide how it should be designed. So you can dig a hole and say how deep it is. All of these sewer things tie together. So the elevation where this sewer connects to the outfall that goes to the rest of our system determines what the elevation is going to be at your home. So you cannot just go in and start at this place and say, I'm going to make it this deep, okay? Because that's what you do in design build. We did design build at the Market House when we did the water line around that. And we opened up the hole and we said, what do we have to put in there? Where's the space to put it? And that's how design build works. You design it as you go because you can do that. But if you have to design where my house is, how deep that sewer is, you have to know how deep the sewer is over here and how it gets from here to there. To do that, you can't work a design build to do that. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. All right, sir.
Okay.
All right, council, this will look to you for action on item 8.01.
There's no action.
Oh, there's no action
Action
required, so
required,
just,
yes.
all right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, don't go too far, you're at item
I know, I got another one.
8.02.
So are you ready for the next item, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this presentation is on Area 25, which is the next area that's getting ready to come for construction. It's the public hearing today. This is Area 25. This is in District 8, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin. This is Cliffdale Heights. Yeah, okay. And Cliffdale Heights, part of Cliffdale Heights is in Area 25, and parts of it are in other areas too. So this is just a portion of it. Okay, so project overview, we'll talk a little bit about what's happened so far. We'll talk about what's coming next. We'll talk about how the cost to property owners work and how the financing options work. So we sent out survey and notification appraisals on February 4th of 2019 for this area. So we've been working in the area for about a year now. On December 9th, the council adopted the preliminary assessment resolution, which set this public hearing to talk about that. And on January 15th, we sent copies of the resolution to all the property owners. So so this will be on your agenda on the 24th to tell us to proceed with construction. If you do that, we'll advertise for construction bids and we'll start construction and complete construction. Construction usually takes about a year to a year and a half to complete, depending on the size of the project. Once it's done, we'll bring to you a preliminary roll, which is a proposed assessment. As we talked, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin, that's when you have an opportunity to look at that. The citizens will see that. If they have any questions about that, we can address those questions before the council acts. There'll be a public hearing at that time, so people can come in and ask questions about that. And then about 6 to 8 weeks later, depending on how we have to do for notifying people and what the statute says about waiting for do those things, you'll be asked to confirm those assessments. As we mentioned before, a typical single-family residential lot is capped at $5,000 for sanitary sewer. There's no additional assessment if you get sewer and water, because some of these areas do not have public water, and we're making public water available. That's part of our agreement with the council. And the per front foot rate is $55.56 with a minimum of 90 feet, plus the average cost of the lateral based on the cost of that project area. No payments due till construction is complete and the assessment roll is adopted, and financial assistance, as we talked about, is available to those who qualify. The options, as we mentioned before, if you know assessment's coming and you want to prepay, you can prepay the assessment with no interest. If it's paid in full within 30 days of the confirmation of the assessment, there's no interest charge with that. You can finance it for up to 10 years. There's no credit checks. Anybody who gets assessed can finance that with us. All right. The council policy is to establish the interest rate at prime plus 2% at the beginning of the fiscal year in which the assessment is confirmed. So when I come to you in a couple of weeks about Area 21, the interest rate will be based on the prime rate on July 1st of 2019 plus 2%. So that's what will happen with the next ones you'll see come before me. I'll be able to tell you what that number is based on council policy. And the customers can pay that in annual or monthly installments. Are there any questions in Area 25?
I do have one. Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
I just want, to be clear for District 8 to let, just inform them that we're going to have our public hearing for the 24th, because we
Right.
do have some people here.
So, yeah, so
District 8.
we're going to leave the public hearing open. I will have these same presentations submitted to staff, so I can make the same presentations if you wish. And then I'll be here to take questions afterwards, and take any questions that you may have based on what you hear from your constituents.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown? All right, sir. You got off
Thank you.
easy tonight, huh?
Compared to usual, yeah. Thank you.
Madam Attorney, you have, I know we need to do a formal procedure. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, sir. So we will open the public hearing, and if there are speakers here tonight, allow those speakers to.
For the second half. I thought we were talking about, and then also, counsel, at the end of this, we need to vote to excuse our council member just for the record. Okay, she wasn't feeling well. So, all right. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, any speakers?
Yes, sir. We have 2 speakers this evening. Our first speaker is Miss Valerie Morrison.
Good evening, ma'am.
My name is Valerie Morrison, and I'm here for my mother Audrey, and she resides at 1853 Rim Road. Mr. Brown answered most of the questions, but what I wanted to know, we already paid a connection fee for a hookup to water with Aqua Water, so will I be assessed again?
I think Mr. Brown was talking about for sewer, but Mr. Brown, you want to answer that?
Okay, I can talk with you later.
So all of these properties are getting sewer, okay? Some of these properties are getting water, okay? If you already have aqua water, then we're not providing water to you. So you won't be getting water from us. So there's only, you don't have to connect. If you are getting our water, you don't have to connect to our water. If you are getting sewer, you don't have to connect to our sewer. But you will have to pay the assessment. There's only one assessment. There's not assessment. If you get both water and sewer, there's still only one assessment.
So if she pays it with Aqua, there is no charge from PWC?
Right, she does not have to connect to our water. She has aqua water, she does not have to connect to our water. She never has to connect to our water.
So if you're a PWC customer that has water as well, you have to pay a hookup fee for the water and one separate for the sewer?
If you get water and sewer in Phase 5, and you connect within 6 months of it being available, there's no connection fee from us. If you connect after 6 months, you pay the connection fee that happened, whatever's in place at the time you connect. But we waive any connection fees for 6 months from the time the sewer is made available to citizens. They have 6 months to connect with no connection fee from us. Okay, and I'm available after.
And ma'am, did that answer your question? Okay, and he's available if you have
I'll
some
meet you in
additional.
the Lafayette room if you have any more questions. Anybody who has questions about Phase 5, I'll meet you in the Lafayette room afterwards.
All right. Madam Clerk, any other speakers?
Yes, sir. One further speaker, Layden Goodwin.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is LaDon Goodwin. I live at 9525 Mountain Home Drive, West Fayetteville. I'm one of the hostages. I'm residents in West Fayetteville, excuse me. So I know a lot of y'all are innocent of any of those actions that occurred a long time ago. The gentleman that's here that's putting out a lot of information tonight is the one I want to see. That's the one I want to beat up on, because calling, yes, sir, Mr. Harry, you and I have had some nice conversations in the past too. But because trying to call down there and get information over the telephone is like trying to herd cats. It just is really difficult. I don't know. Can y'all understand what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not speaking a foreign language or anything. I know I got a real strong accent, but it's like you can't get very good information over the telephone about this sewage thing, because I live out there in that area 25 that he's talking about, and I just will be in Area 51. So, Mr. Brown, you and I are going to dance. Thank you, Council, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mr. Brown, you better go dance after we close.
Mayor, we have no further speakers.
All right. So with that, we'll close the public hearing. You had something to add, sir?
I'm just saying, I'm going to go to the Lafayette room. Anybody has any questions about Phase 5, please come and I'll answer your questions. Stay till your answer.
Madam Attorney?
Mayor, this is the area that we said we would leave the public hearing open.
Oh.
Because of the confusion.
That is correct. Thank you for reminding me.
So
Madam,
you can rescind that.
Madam Clerk, let me rescind the closing of this public hearing. We'll suspend it to the next meeting. And that is, and just for the listening audience, there was a little confusion about what night the public hearing was pertaining to these items. So some people thought it was on our next council meeting on the fourth Monday. So in the event that you have not spoken tonight and would like to speak, you'll be allowed an opportunity to speak on the fourth Monday on the next council meeting. So if you're looking by in the listening audience at home or otherwise, you can come sign up and say your piece in the next council meeting. So we'll leave that open. With that, council, I think that concludes our business. What we will do, I need a motion to excuse Councilmember Ingram. Is that, we're at the end of the meeting. It's okay? All right, we want to stay legal. All right, the city attorney said it's all right. So we have a motion to adjourn, council? So moved, sir. All right, have a good day.